Everyone, and welcome to Raising the Bar Adelaide here at the Reform Distillery, and we'd like to welcome Elizabeth Williamson tonight to speak to us about dealing with difficult situations and people. Elizabeth is a social worker, mediator and conflict skills coach. Elizabeth works on a personal level with couples and individuals as a therapist, and on an organisational level she helps businesses and leaders improve relationships and resolve conflicts. So I'll hand over to Elizabeth now and enjoy the night.
Hello everybody. What a strange thing to do on a Tuesday night, to come out. I mean, it's wonderful that you're drinking gin, because that's a really good idea. But to come to a night in the middle of winter and talk about arguments, what a strange thing to do. So I'm going to give you a bit of a disclaimer first. I might look like I'm drunk, because I will wobble, I can guarantee that. But I'm not, although I have gorgeous Adelaide gin here. I have a spinal cord injury, and so I have some partial paralysis, and my conflict these days is with gravity. So, but the whole goal in life is to look like I'm drunk when I'm sober. Well, no, sorry, the other way around, sober when I'm drunk. The joke won't work here. It works really well in the corporate environment, doesn't it? But I've already had that gin, and so I can't play the joke. I want to take you on just a journey of stories tonight, because conflict is all about the stories we tell ourselves and other people tell about us. And mainly, in my observation, and actually in my own life, I'm sorry to say, we get it a little bit wrong, and often we get it really wrong. And I've spent the last 5 years trying to find a really simple model that would help people understand what works in conflict situations to move things forward and what doesn't work. And I think most people know what doesn't work really well. My observation, my experience, is that we're really good at doing what doesn't work. I mean, then we observed it didn't work, but we thought we'd do it again. And then that didn't work, but we committed to that action, so we do it again. And then we blame the other person for not getting it right around us. Would anybody have any familiarity with that experience? Yeah, okay. And it's not rocket science, but it is a little bit counterintuitive at times, and specifically dealing with people who are conflict-driven, who like conflict, even if they say they don't. Someone's nodding already, okay. So I want you just, you might be thinking of a family member who you've wanted to divorce, or, think that you were eating, Elon Musk's son, who has, divorced the family. Or you might have had a partner or a relationship in the past and went, oh, that didn't have very good outcomes. Or it might be a workplace that you're currently in or have experienced in the past. You might be the manager of someone who is giving you sleepless nights, or you might have the manager who is giving you sleepless nights. So we all know what it's like, really, isn't it, to deal with difficult and demanding people, but none of us quite know how to get it right. Would you agree? Is that why you're here? So, look, I hope all of you got a postcard. If you didn't, put your hand up, and the lovely Georgie is going to give you one, because that just gives you a bit of a model that I've been working on, and that might help as we're talking through, and if also if you want to ask some questions at the end. What's really exciting for me is that I've just launching tonight a new ebook on my website, a free download, which is about my conflict confidence model. And also what's really exciting is I've just started having discussions with a publisher about a full book. So I'm really keen to get this message out, and I'm so delighted you're here tonight. A little bit about me. I'm a social worker. Not many people know what we actually do. We're sort of committed to social justice. We're all about relationships, and we work in really diverse areas. I started off working in community development. I've worked with 3 local governments, so we know all about conflict in local government. In fact, naively, at one stage in my later life, I ran a workshop for elected members in how to mediate and reduce conflict. I don't know what outcome that actually had. And anyone here with any experience with government might understand what I'm talking about. But what I discovered was working with a bunch of women that wanted to start a community centre was that it was just a bunch of arguments in the committee. And then because this was, sorry to say last century, they had arguments with their husbands because they weren't home often enough to cook meals. So I had to sort of start mediating and supporting the women to have arguments with their husbands and to have their husbands a little bit less angry, and then to have little committees and the government, the state government and the local government just all arguing. And I really didn't know what I was doing. I moved on into community health where I worked with people who were dealing with mental health issues. And what I realised is that as a therapist, we just argue with ourselves incessantly. We've all got that voice that, you're driving home and you're not thinking about anything, but you realise you've been having an argument with Mike for 20 minutes about things you could have said in the meeting, or in the time when he ignored you in the staff room, or just that look that you get. And that's 20 minutes of life you've just wasted. You weren't even realising you were doing it. Does anybody actually know that experience as well? Yeah. So then I thought I'd really leap into the deep end, and I worked with Vietnam veterans. Now, at that time, I was in my mid-30s, I was blonde, I was pretty good looking, I thought at the time. They may not have, but they all smoked, they all had PTSD, and I was helping them run a men's shed, and they were fighting the organisation that employed me. So they were having a battle with the Department of Veteran Affairs, who employed me as a consultant, and that was bizarre. That was just another level of conflict, and particularly trauma-driven conflict, which is really complex. I moved on to running a domestic violence service. I've made some really wise choices in my life around conflict. And so that was at the deep end of what happens when you're dealing with difficult people and difficult circumstances and danger. And then I thought I'd become a family therapist. And I thought that'd be great, I'd help with these people who wanted to have better relationships, but mainly have people who were ready to divorce, and they've avoided coming to see anyone for probably about 6 to 8 months before they should have. And, it's hard work. And I work with families in mediation and in workplaces around mediation. So I have lived a life of arguments. And you know why that is? Because, now, if there's any of my family members, don't look at them, who are here, don't look at them, but I'm really good at starting arguments. Like, I've had to learn this because of all my faults and flaws, right? So I don't speak to you as someone who's sort of, really clever. I'm actually really good at being dumb. And if we could all just be better at accepting that we're really a little bit stupid most of the time in our relationships, we've probably made a mistake. We've probably misheard what was said, we've misinterpreted what the other person said, we've made the wrong assumption, we'd all get on so much better. So if there's one thing you could take away from tonight is give up the need to be right. And maybe just go, oh yeah, I could be wrong about that, more often. In fact, it's a good, very clever thing to do. If you go, yeah, I suppose I was a bit wrong about that. And then don't move, don't defend yourself, don't say anything. It's actually very hard to pick a fight. Because if someone gets really angry, you go, well, yeah, I probably was wrong about that. We could move on. So, one of the challenges we have with conflict is that we think in binary terms. So here's clue number 2. If you are thinking in black, white, right, wrong, he said, I said, she said, good, bad, fair, unfair, you are automatically not going to get the outcome you want. Conflicts are complex, and the tip of what you're dealing with is usually irrelevant. What you think the story is usually not what's going on. So I hope everyone here got one of my postcards with my 6-step model, Conflict Confidence, because that's really the clue of what I'm going to talk about tonight. I'm going to take you some of that to give you some idea of what I've been trying to develop over the last 5 years. So, the trick is that as I said before, no one tells the same story about conflict. So I don't know, have you ever been around a family dinner and you're talking about an event that happened and no one saw it the way you saw it? Have you ever tried to raise a complaint, with your parents about something that happened in the past where they totally did not see that happening? Yeah? Yeah, so what happens is when we tell stories about conflict, it's about drama. It's about the books you read, they're all about conflict, right? The songs you listen to, the broken heart, it's about conflict. If you watch comedy, Mr. Bean is the classic example, it's about conflict. The thing about comedy is the conflict never evolves. The comedy is all about the person stuck in the same set of situations. They don't actually develop any skills along the way. That's what drives the comedy along. Has anyone seen Fisk? It's brilliant for that sort of stuff. Kitty Flanagan is just brilliant in the way she presents that sort of stuff. But you can probably think of 100 other comedians who really get it. So we all tell a story, and we are the centre of our story, because of course, what do we think mostly about? Ourselves. And so when we think about a conflict, we've got it all worked out from our point of view. And then what we tend to do is we tend to look for the things that prove that our story is right. We're not very scientific, so we don't try to disprove our theory, we just absolutely look for things that confirm our point of view. And I can guarantee that no one else is telling that story. Everybody else in a conflict situation has another story. And conflict stories are embedded in the idea of hero, villain, and rescuer. Just think of the woman tied on the tracks of a railway and the train steaming along and the bad guys are there. There she is, the victim in all this, innocent, unable to deal with the situation. The villains are clearly villains and the rescuer will come at the last minute and untie her and save the day. That is the crux of every conflict. It's the crux of the conflicts you have with yourself when you argue with yourself. It's the crux of the conflicts you have in your relationships when you argue with family or partners or siblings. It's the crux of what happens in your workplace. It's the crux of what happens in our geopolitics. It runs our lives and it isn't going to go away. So the first thing we've got to understand is that that's who we are as people. We run this story of hero, villain, rescuer through everything we do. And we're not going to change that. I mean, I have cats. I don't know if anyone have cats. I'm going to segue into cats here. Anybody have a cat? Or two? Anyone with 2 cats or more? Do they fight at 3 and 6 o'clock in the morning, every morning? Yeah, they fight. You can't change the character of a cat. You can't change our character either. We're always going to be that little bit embedded in that story. Dealing with difficult, demanding people means you're dealing with people who have absolutely no interest in your story. They've only got one story. This is the first clue. They've got one story, it's their story. They are the director of the movie. They're the star of the movie. They've written a script. You have been allocated a role. You may not know what that role is. They may change your role at any time if they decide that it'd be better off you playing another part. And they play that story out repeatedly in their life. It's a sort of endemic story in their life. What do I mean by difficult, demanding people when I say that? People who are conflict-driven. People who, despite what they may say, are always involved or engaged in some sort of conflict. So Bill Eddy, who runs the High Conflict Institute in the States, has been doing a lot of work. He's a social worker and a divorce lawyer. What a combination to go crazy with, I would have thought. But anyway, he's been doing research for many, many years, and he would say that 10% of the population are high conflict. So they're volatile, highly emotive, easily upset, reactive, do the things that 90% of the population wouldn't do. So if you've ever worked in a call centre or do any customer service, you know these people. Yeah? But I think there's another 10% on the top. The 10% of the people who are not overtly, dramatic, but they seem to always be having a drama of some sort, which they don't really want to resolve, right? They always, and you have to get involved. They're really committed to sharing the story with you, and no matter how many crises they seem to have, it doesn't move, nothing changes. Oh, you're smiling there. I love it when I tell these talks, so people I can see these facial expressions around them going, oh no, this one. If it was in training, I'd actually call you to tell us a story, but I won't make you do that. So there's that other 10% who are just lost in conflict. So I've been working on a committee, a lovely group of people. We had a great woman come and join us, and she got really involved, and we got presents, and she had all these sorts of, things that she wanted to be involved in. But slowly, it sort of unravelled, and then something happened in her life, which I gather might have happened more than once. And she started making demands of everybody, or particularly people in the committee. She sussed out the soft touches, and she individually, made little requests that became increasingly demanding and assumptive of people in that group. And then if you didn't actually do what she wanted to do, she just shut you out. So the other thing you can watch for a clue is, does someone shut people off pretty quickly? Because that will put them in that difficult, demanding, highly controlling category. Because the relationships are very transactional. If it works for me, I'm engaged. If it doesn't work, I'll move on. And they can be really charming when you first meet them. You spend a lot of time getting to know you, and they'll discover why, you love that black and white scarf, and they'll find out about, the thing that your mum knitted for you, and, what's happening with your family, and, your aches and pains, and they're really sympathetic. And then if you don't fit in with something they want, all of a sudden they're attacking you. Has anyone ever had that experience? Right? So suddenly you didn't get it right and you are the enemy, or they're just not interested in you anymore, or you ghosted. So there are some really important clues to look for. And it's that 90% of what people would normally do that you have little gut feelings about that are generally the thing you're looking for. There are no red flags. I've never worked with a client in my life who's had a red flag. They've had a little gut feeling that they ignored and thought, no, we'll just ignore that. It's fine, it's just a moment, that has slowly built up over time. So, hello! It's our last guest. He was hoping to sneak in, but he could well be the star of the show. Welcome. So if we think about clues, maybe think about some of the people that have brought you here tonight that you might be trying to resolve some conflicts with. The other thing I'd really like to leave you with is what's really important is that you control your emotional well-being, because the goal of people who are highly controlling is that they'll occupy all your thoughts. You see, they're not very good at managing their own emotions, right? So what they want to do is they want you to manage them for them, because they're not responsible. In their story, the world's against them, or they have some privilege or entitlement, or they can be dismissive if they want to because they're very busy all the time, or their life's very important, or whatever it is. And so you've got to conserve your energy, and you've got to stay calm when they're irritable over some petty little issue that's come up, or some major drama that they're actually invested in. We have these things called mirror neurons in our brains, and they are the thing that drives you to smile at a baby and the baby to smile at you. We are patterned to copy emotional responses, and we're patterned particularly to copy visual clues, because we're quite a facially visual being. So the left side of your brain works on words and logic and slower problem solving. So when you think about thinking, you're using the left side of your brain. The right side of your brain is more involved in very quick, rapid decision making, generally around threat and danger. And that's the part that gets elevated when we think we've got a risk or a threat. People who are very controlling, people who are difficult, demanding, high conflict, whatever you want to call them, drama kings, drama queens, are locked into habitually falling to the right. And we've probably had a few politicians on the right who are a little bit the same. you might be able to think of some of them in the last 10 years that we don't have anymore. So, anyway. So what we need to do, the other thing that fires it up is we have this amygdala, this little gland in the middle of our brain, and that the brain wraps around it, and that fires straight away as soon as we see danger. So it just kicks into that right side of the brain, and we immediately prepare for danger. And it distorts our visual perspective. So what happens is that we see danger everywhere if we cannot manage our emotions well. So people who are controlling and difficult, demanding, don't manage their emotions well. So your smile will look like a sneer. Your apology will sound sarcastic. Your attempt to explain something will sound like you're undermining the situation and out to get them, or whatever, okay? So there's lots of reasons why you don't want to spend a lot of time defending yourself, because it won't work. Importantly, the trick you need to do is to stay centred, because you're dealing with someone who's off-centre. And because they don't manage their own emotions well, that internal chaos plays out externally in their life, and they want you as part of that story. You know, they want you in the game, and it takes a fair bit of energy to not do that. And it's really important that you can manage your own emotional regulation, and there's a really easy trick to it. It's called breathing. As a therapist, I'm sad to say, I can spend 50 minutes with a client having a philosophical, existential discussion, teaching them some things, you know, having a really interesting time, and then we do some breathing. And then at the end, I say this at the end of every session, and what was most helpful today? And they'll say, oh, the breathing. And I just think of all the wise words I imparted and the insights I had and the journey we took. But your breathing is the key, because your breath rate reduces your heart rate, which reduces your thought rate, which gets you back into that left side of your brain. And the trick is that about 100 heartbeats a minute, you cannot think clearly. You're in that fight, flight, freeze mode. We've got some heads nodding. You know about this. And so if you're dealing with someone who's already there, and you've got these mirror neurons that want to drag you there, your skill you need to have is to be able to get your breathing to slow down and go, hold on, I'm not going to do this. What have I got to do? I've got to breathe. Oh my God, it's really hard to slow my breathing down. How am I going to do that? And to get your heart rate down, to get your thought rates down, so you stay in control. The benefit of being able to do that is that as you, because of those mirror neurons, as you slow your breath down, the other person tends to slow their breath down a little bit more, and you get to lead more of what's happening in the conversation. And the trick is to slow your breathing down, to take pauses in what you say, because you'll have to breathe more. Not big breaths. You don't have to hyperventilate. You can even do it so nobody knows what you're doing. But pause between your breath, in and out. Because when you pause, you can check out how you are. And then you'll be aware of the next breath. And you can do it with your eyes open and be involved in a conversation and be in control. But if you breathe in slowly, like you could just try right now, and paused, and then breathe out slowly and gently and just paused, and did that maybe for 4 or 5 rounds, you'll be calmer. And you have a lot more control. There are some other things you need to do about staying centred, which is the second step in my model. But breath is key, and it's such a simple thing that if you can become more aware of your breathing, you probably notice some people get your heart rate racing and your breath really short, or you hold your breath. So your clue is, I'm not going to manage this well if I'm like that. I once had a situation where I had to walk with someone having quite a debate. I wanted to start the debate about things that I was unhappy with that they were doing repetitively. I wanted to lay down some complaints. But the other person actually wanted to alert me to something that I'd been repetitively doing and actually was unaware of. And, you know, it's best to listen first. Number 3 rule, listen. Listen. Everybody, what does everyone want in their life? To be listened to. So when you interrupt someone and go, I don't think that's right, don't listen to this. It's A, disrespectful, and B, will just escalate the conflict. Anyway, so it was about a 20-minute walk, and I just kept breathing every time I wanted to interrupt, because I had to learn what I had no idea I was doing. Because I'm like everybody else, just a little bit stupid several times a day. And of course, you know, in some of our relationships, repetitively stupid. Anyway, I got some insight. I realised how significant it was for this person. I made a commitment to not do it again, to the best of my ability, and also if I do it again, you can call me. And then, only then, could I put my point of view about what I was unhappy about. Now that's a skill very few people practice, that you will listen to someone to understand what their perspective is. You don't have to agree. But there's nothing more important in our lives than to be understood. Is that true? And you don't have to agree to give someone the respect of listening. A little bit of empathy goes a long, long way. But if you can let the person know, not only that you're listening, yeah, I heard what you said. Yeah, I heard what you said. Did that convince anybody? Who has done that in an argument? Yeah, I know. Escalation point, I can guarantee. You have to actually prove it. Particularly men. Sorry. But some of the women in here might start nodding if I say, we're very experienced in that, yeah, I got it, I know what you're talking about, and we know that you don't, and you know what? I know from family therapy that you don't either. So, the skill is to be able to hear what someone's saying and repeat it back. So you stay with their conversation. So they can go, yeah, you're right, or no, it's a bit more like this. No one cares if you get it wrong. They care about correcting you and helping you get it a little bit more right. Unless they're difficult and demanding, in which case you'll have your another clue that you're dealing with someone who doesn't want to negotiate or solve any problems. But most people go, yeah, it's more like this. Because we're keen, so keen, and we're dying, we're longing to be understood. And for our perspective and our story to be understood. If you're difficult and demanding, you want to be right. But most people just want to be understood. But then you have to prove it. So the most important thing to do is to validate, to say to someone, so having heard what you said, from your perspective, it's like this. That is one of the most powerful little sentences you can create. So having heard what you said, from your perspective, I understand that you see it like this, and that this is important to you. With difficult and demanding people, that is crucial, because whatever the thing is, it's important to them, and they want you to play into that game. And they want their emotions to be important. The truth is you take it down 2 steps. So if they're furious in front of you, you don't use that word. You go, I can see that you're concerned about. If someone's really upset in that difficult, demanding category, you might say, I can see that you've spent a lot of time worrying about this. But you want to just use language skills to reduce the emotional intensity. And see if it works. Because we've got to work on an evidence base. So you try something and it might work, and then if you go, okay, well that didn't work, you try something else. It's really like tacking a boat in the wind. You don't have to get it right the first time, and I really want to reassure you, you won't. I don't. I can tell you, and I've been doing this for years. We mainly make mistakes, right, as human beings. Let's just accept it. We get it wrong, we don't hear, we misunderstand, we can't even get the words out of our mouth about what we're really thinking. So we're going to get it wrong. Wouldn't it be easy to be, I've probably made a mistake about that, and we all moved on. So yeah, validating is really important, which means you've got to slow that heart rate of yours down and that thought rate down and stop thinking about yourself and what you really want to say in response to listen. Don't you? Because mainly what do we do when someone's talking? Think about what we want to say, we think about ourselves. So, perhaps we can all be a little bit difficult and demanding at times if we're just locked into our own stories. Well, I know I can, So, I could share the story of being very difficult and demanding, but I think I'll let you meet me again for that one. I will share a story at the moment. I've just done some work with anyone here from an Italian or, vaguely, European, Mediterranean background who has a family that's loud and volatile and opinionated, maybe a little bit patriarchal, Okay, some nods, right. So I've just been working with a lovely man who is the eldest son in an Italian family, but his younger sister has taken over. And he had no idea what to do, with the care of mum and dad who are ageing. Now, he has actually expertise in this area, but she'd taken over so well, she'd organised that she and the brother were going to be the attorney, what do you call it? The had power of attorney making all the decisions. And for whatever her story is, I guess, that I'm the youngest and no one's ever listened to me, and I know the best because I've been around. You've all just gone away and left me. Let's just say that's the story, right? So, of course, his story was, it's not fair, I'm the eldest, why should you be kicking me out? I'm going to have a fight about X, Y and Z. So there was a huge storm in their family, a huge storm about what they were going to do with Kris Kringle. And whether his children might just step out of Kris Kringle because they want to do something different, and it produced a division within the family that polarised things so much that his mother wept every day for 2 months. That each family member came to him with an entreaty going, can't you just get them to join in? And he was at his, and there was all this other stuff happening on his parents' care, and no one would listen to him, and he actually has, he knows the aged care system. So he felt very shut out. Now, we've had 5 conversations, and he's turned everything around. He came up to me last week and he said, I looked at my wife and I said, did that really happen? To make change is just 10%. You don't have to do, in fact, it's not like the movies, you don't do a big thing. Nobody likes big things in relationships. They like really small, repetitive stuff. So if you just make 10% change consistently, it's amazing how quick you can change the dynamics in your relationships. And you can manage people who are emotive or really committed to, their story, which makes no sense to you or anybody else. And so, of course, his sister just, sat and had a chat with him. And I just made sure that he rang her up the next day and said, thanks, this was a great idea to organise that, and validated what she was doing, and you've got great insight with what's happening to our parents, despite the fact that they'd had a Barney over the fact that, it was a he said, she said, no we don't, yes we have to, no we don't, about providing financial information to the aged care system. And she was wrong. And she didn't apologise for being wrong, but she had an argument for 2 weeks with them about it. But, the trick was, so what? Just ring her up and say it was great, you did X, Y, Z. Because pointing out that she was wrong and I was right, guess what that'll do? Yeah. I want to leave some time for some questions, but I'll just point out a couple other things. No one should deal with difficult, demanding people by themselves. You need, and we've got another nod in the front here, you need to be able to get support. So the last part of my model is to check in. And sometimes we need professional advice. I don't deal with any of the major conflicts in my life, which, like most of us, are repetitive. And boring, but they go on, there they are, without having someone I admire in the way they approach relationships to talk to. I've got colleagues, obviously, but I've actually, the reason why I'm here tonight is because I know this fantastic woman called Sandy, and I've watched her for, 20 years, and I've learned everything she does. Because, remember I wasn't very good at this. So I've watched the best. I've studied with the best. I've just gone, if I keep doing what I'm doing, I'm going to have a bunch of very unhappy relationships. And I have to say, I feel like I've nailed the relationships I want to have now. And I'm very old to have done this, right? So please don't take as long as I have. So people who, when you set up support, make it time limited. Can we meet once a week, once a fortnight for a coffee? Can I just tell you what's happening with Jane? I just want to bounce around. And if you are supporting someone, your job is to be objective, not to agree. Your job is to go, I wonder what else is happening. I wonder what Jane was thinking. Can you work out what might have been happening for Jane? So you take the person out of their story and into the broader dynamic. Or Peter, what do you think Peter's perspective might have been? Or whatever. It's really important that you can just get that little bit of objectivity, but also maintain your curiosity, because we're so committed to our stories, we're not scientific, we try to prove ourselves right, and when I'm coaching people, my whole job is to go, well, can you prove yourself wrong? Can you be much more objective? What if you're not right about that? There's a really fine art in being wrong, and we should have more skill in doing it. Because once we think we're not right, perhaps we're a little bit wrong, we have to ask more questions. We have to look more broadly at what's happening in our lives. If you're experiencing coercive control, someone who's highly controlling, then that's abuse. You might have to leave a workplace that's toxic. You might have to leave a relationship where someone's commitment to their own well-being and their own goals is harming you. And in both cases, there are real risks, and it is really wise to get involved with a professional so you can actually have a safety plan. I worked in domestic violence, I well understand that. A number of good therapists can help you with that, but conflict coaches, like myself, we focus on the harder end of things. And particularly, I've got a client at the moment who is just about to come up to 10 years in her workplace, and she's had a great time. It's been difficult, but it's been great, and she wants her 10 years leave, right? And she's never left a workplace not on her terms. She's always lived on her terms. So she wants to leave on her terms. She's got about 4 months to get to 10 years, and it is one of the most toxic workplaces I've heard of. Small business, mum, dad, 2 sons, highly misogynistic family who have their arguments in front of all of the staff. So of course, the woman is anxious, would she not be, in that situation? And so she comes in with a whole bunch of things and she just shouts at people to do them in no particular order. The husband, the elder male, is the master of the realm. He has absolutely no interest in his staff or their welfare. He simply sees them as replaceable. And the 2 sons are building empires, and they've learnt a lot from mum and dad. So that's a family tradition that's going to be continuing. So they have a huge high staff turnover. This woman has a pivotal role in that organisation, and we're just working on a plan for her so that she can leave in 3 to 4 months. She can get her long service leave. She's not going to go crazy, because she stormed out of the office the other day feeling like she was. And that she can actually manage some of this misbehaviour. Not be responsible for it, but some strategies, particularly to deal with the woman, where she might have some influence. So it's critical to think in all our relationships, and particularly with difficult, demanding people, or highly controlling people, about influence, not power. Because they'll be thinking about power and control over, and it's a myth. You can have incredible influence anywhere, in a family, in an organisation. You can make those 5 and 10% changes that really do move things along if you're consistent with it, if it's possible. And lead. We can all lead individually in our relationships. And in fact, women here, I'm going to be a bit gender biased. I apologise if I insult anybody, but I think we should lead our relationships far more than complain. The research is that we complain 80% to 20% female-male ratio, because because we're paying more attention to that relationship stuff. So I think we should encourage and lead and rather than complain, say this is the way I want, this is the direction I want things to go in. And you know, that might change, that might create some interesting conversations, but we know a whole lot of stuff about relationships that is invaluable. Let's use some of our influence. And that might mean that the guys have to practice that listening skill I talked about before. But of course, if you want to know any more about that, you know, I'm available for a consultation and plug. I'm going to stop here. Tonight I'm really excited because we are launching this beautiful book. It's a revised ebook, and I need the lovely Bella to stand up because Bella is a student and my assistant PA and everything, and social media and design, and she's put the cover together and done a lot of the artwork in there. And Alanthe isn't here, but if Stephen stood up, you could be our Alanthe. And so Stephen's wife, Alanthe, has also been integral into putting this book together, and we're working on an online training program. So we've got some really interesting things coming up. It's just fantastic to have tonight to share that with you. So if you've got any questions, I'd be really happy to answer them.
I think a round of applause before questions.
Could I ask Georgie maybe to help with the mic, or I'll just wander around? Actually, you're more stable than me, so Georgie or I've forgotten her name.
Patrick.
Yeah, can you do the mic bit, and then I'll just stand here. Rather than okay, I think Elena's
I was just wondering, what's the best way to deal with somebody who is always right? Like, always right. You know, no matter what you say, they are always right.
Well, let them be. Just agree to disagree. I can see that you have a strong opinion about this. I may not see it the same way. Make it soft. I may not see it the same way.
So you just validate.
You're not validating. What you're doing is saying, I see you. I can see that you have a strong opinion. I'm not validating you. I'm not saying it's great that you think you're right. If you're always right, then you have very strong opinions. Yeah, I'm not going to change them, I can guarantee that one. But I may not see it the same way. It tells you where I am. And it's just a little softer saying, I don't see it that way. Because if they're always right, guess what? They want to pick a fight with you about that, right? So you soften. Remember, I always said, take the temperature down a couple of pegs. So you might go, there are possibly a number of different ways you could see this. But I see that you're committed to your point of view. You're not going to convince them, so don't bother. They're not interested in discussion or negotiation, so don't waste your energy. Just let them be right. Like, what else can you do? You just look after yourself in the process and go, oh, well, we could agree to disagree. I might have some other interesting thoughts about that. Don't tell them what they are. Just exit. Because what's the point of the conversation? It's not a conversation, is it? It's a lecture. Yeah, well, if you want to be lectured, stay in the conversation. If you don't want to be lectured, you go, well, thanks.
Anybody else? This is kind of a similar question to the one that you just asked, but I'm new to an organisation in a leadership role, and I'm very mindful of the fact that I want my staff to feel heard and feel like they're validated and like I'm listening to them. And I'm finding that they tend to come to me with quite big emotions, whether that be tears or real frustration. And my natural instinct is to try and really strongly empathise with them, and that usually sounds like I'm agreeing with how they're feeling. And then I find out after the fact that there's, a huge picture behind that I didn't know about. So what I want to know is how I can empathise with them and make sure that they feel heard without necessarily agreeing with or, agreeing with them, if that makes sense.
So this is where a model having a model comes in really handy. You've walked into history.
Yeah.
So what are the stories? What are the clues? You need to do a bit of evidence hunting down, be a bit of a detective before you start empathising, because you have no idea what you're empathising with. Also, if this is a habit in that team, they've been doing drama for a while, right? So you don't want to empathise with the drama. So your staying calm is important. Oh, okay. Look, but it's also you set the tone. Well, look, the way I want us to explore problems here is like this. And there's a third step in my model is be very concise when you're dealing with people who are highly emotive. A, they don't listen, they can't listen, their minds are flooded. Sorry, their emotions are flooded and their minds are sort of turned off. So you want to just you want to be able to get them calmer rather than empathise. So you might want to set the tone of the new environment, create the new story. So how I want to do things around here is that no one needs to get really upset. How we can deal with problems here is that, calm down a bit and let's talk through what you see happening or what your concerns are, so I get a clearer picture of what you see. Keep your empathy to one side. I mean, that's empathic in itself, right? But they're not sympathy, and it's not engaging in their story. So when you walk into history of drama, first clue is, well, I need to know how many stories are operating. Because I can tell you, I've done mediations with 7 people in a finance team. You're not in finance, are you? Okay. Where, one woman believed it was totally appropriate to tell people what she thought in an abrupt manner, curtly, without looking at them, that they would appreciate that because she was being direct and honest. And when she was told she was a bully by this not aware enough director, she immediately felt bullied, funnily enough. And so then we had a mediation where, she wasn't even going to participate because it was totally unfair because they were bullying her. Because, you just don't know what the stories are. So get curious about the stories. None of them make any sense to you. So what you do is use that repeating back. So I get it. So you see it like this, because you might have just a whole lot of baloney operating in that team that you can go, look, you can make a decision about as a manager what is going on. You might need a bit of support, and it'd be great to have maybe someone to debrief and coach with and go, oh, I've got no idea how to make sense of this, but yeah.
So, sorry, I'll follow on from that. So, in that moment, you said, I can see that you see it like this. How can you sort of close it off without...
So I did some work with a childcare centre where they had a lot of people getting very, very upset coming in, and so the rule was you can't come in upset. So if you are upset, we care, go and take a breather. You have 20 minutes to calm down. It's about the time the brain needs, right? And then you come and talk to me. So if you come in upset, that's fine. We'll find you a room, you calm down, and then you can come in and we'll talk about it. We don't have any conversations while you're upset. Because they won't take any information. It's not a conversation, they are flooded. So you care enough to give them a quiet space so that you can have a professional conversation, because we have professional behaviours in this workplace. Yeah, I mean, in my business, if someone comes in and they're pouting or, grumpy, that's it, you can't do that. I'll say, I can see something's up, so we'll need to talk about that. Do you want some time? Yeah, no, good. It's, we are quite capable of behaving well. Yeah, with a bit of help.
Just as a comment, I had a manager who used to say, if it's a problem, I don't want to hear it, bring the solution for your problem. And that was
No. No, I would never say that. No, that's provocative. No. If you've got a problem, I'm interested, but I have some rules about how we'll talk about it. If you've got a problem, I had this with a staff member a while ago around the